You're listening to the European Parliamentary Research Service podcast on energy supply and security in Europe.
Can you imagine modern life without electricity? It takes only a short blackout to realise just how much we depend on it.
This is why ensuring energy supply and security has become a top priority for the European Union, even if on energy matters both member states and the EU have something to say. Want to know more? Stay with us.
Did you know that the EU imports more than half of all the energy it consumes?
Yes, and we're actually paying over €1 billion per day to import this energy, so it's an expensive bill.
Dependency is particularly high for crude oil and natural gas, and many European countries are heavily reliant on a single supplier, which leaves them vulnerable to supply disruptions, whether caused by political or commercial disputes or infrastructure failure.
Security of supply is guaranteed in the first instance by national authorities, yet the interconnected nature of energy markets and supply routes means that close coordination is necessary to prevent blackouts and ensure security of supply.
This responsibility falls on the shoulders of the EU, even if member states are still free to decide on the structure of their energy supply and the sources they use.
The increasing interconnection of European energy markets brings many benefits for European citizens. For example, they are free to choose their energy supplier. They share a common set of consumer rights and can benefit from lower prices and more transparent and competitive markets.
And there is an increasing role for the EU to play here. According to recent Eurobarometer polls, the support of EU citizens for stronger EU involvement in the energy supply and security area grew from 53% in 2016 to 65% in 2018.
Currently, EU legislation on security of supply focuses essentially on natural gas and electricity markets, as coal and oil are supplied by many countries and relatively easy to store and transport, which is not the case with natural gas.
Indeed, in contrast to coal and oil, the supply of natural gas to Europe remains heavily reliant on historic pipelines from a small number of producer countries, mainly Russia, Norway and Algeria. This poses particular challenges in terms of supply diversification, market access and competition, and infrastructure reliability.
Concerning the electricity sector, the biggest challenge is grid modernisation to accommodate a growing share of renewable energy sources and local power generation in national electricity markets with growing cross-border capacity.
Furthermore, the supply capacity of some renewable energy sources, such as wind and solar, is variable. So it's vital for national authorities to coordinate their electricity policies if they want to avoid sudden surges or losses of power.
So the EU needs to be continually vigilant in monitoring electricity and gas markets to ensure that our homes, businesses, hospitals and schools are not left without power.
Next to ensuring energy supply and a functioning internal energy market, the EU is also promoting energy efficiency and savings and new forms of clean energy to help Europe meet its climate objectives. So let's have a look at the legal framework for all these actions. Stay with us.
The internal energy market in the EU was gradually established by three market liberalisation packages which unbundled energy production and supply from energy transmission networks. The first measures were adopted in the 1990s, and the Commission is now busy enforcing the application of the third energy package across member states.
In May 2014, the Commission presented its energy security strategy to reduce dependency on energy imports and ensure a reliable supply of fossil fuels. And a few months after that, the Council endorsed the EU Climate and Energy Framework for 2030, which sets out targets on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, increased share of renewables, and improved energy efficiency by 2030.
The EU policy focus on energy was renewed under the Juncker Commission with the adoption of the Energy Union strategy in 2015, which focuses on energy security, completing the internal energy market, energy efficiency, decarbonisation, as well as research and innovation. But how are all these policies and initiatives being funded?
Well, under the current EU budget, which runs until 2020, several programmes include energy as one of their funding priorities. For instance, funding for energy-related projects is available to member states through the structural and investment funds.
And around €2 billion from the Regional Development Fund has been allocated to modernise gas and electricity infrastructures, but money is also available from the Cohesion Funds, the Horizon 2020 programme on research and innovation, the Connecting Europe facility and the European Fund for Strategic Investments, among others.
Over recent years, a lot has been done at EU level to ensure security of supply. The EU institutions agreed to revise the old regulation on security of gas supply in order to introduce a solidarity principle for gas sharing in an emergency situation, enhance regional cooperation on security of supply, and allow more effective EU monitoring and coordination. And that's not all.
They also agreed to a review of intergovernmental agreements in the energy field and on new targets for energy efficiency and renewables by 2030. At the same time, the Parliament has adopted several resolutions in the energy field, including one on the new EU strategy on liquefied natural gas and gas storage, which is key to gas supply security.
And currently, negotiations between the European Parliament, the Council and the Commission are ongoing on a proposal to revise the regulation on security of electricity supply. But what role will the EU play in future? Stay with us.
Up to now, the Energy Union strategy has placed great emphasis on security of supply and linked this to the proper functioning of the single market, as well as the promotion of renewables and energy efficiency schemes that enhance energy security by cutting dependence on imported fossil fuels. And it is safe to assume that in the future, the EU will retain a key role in monitoring security of supply and encouraging the transition from fossil fuels towards low carbon and renewable sources.
But as President Juncker hinted at in his 2018 State of the Union letter to Member States and Parliament, the EU could go a step further and take on new powers to act in areas that are currently the preserve of Member States, such as the energy mix and the structure of energy supply.
In this letter, the Commission proposed to develop a new institutional framework for EU energy and climate policy by 2025, including options for enhanced qualified majority voting instead of unanimity, although this could only be done if all Member States agree in the first place.
So, still unclear. What is clear, however, is that in the light of the pressing challenges in this sector, energy-related projects should continue to receive generous funding under the next EU budget, which will run until 2027.
You're listening to the European Parliamentary Research Service podcasts.